Her mother-in-law begged her to come home for the holidays. After a 10-hour flight, her MIL opened the door. No hello, no hug. She just said, "You'll babysit your sister-in-law's kids. We're going on a family trip." Her husband laughed. "Don't wipe your snot on her, kids." They all laughed, but she just smiled and said one thing, and that's when they went crazy. Her Mill kept whispering, "No, no, no way." Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. May the Almighty bless every woman with boundless strength, unshakable courage, and a heart that radiates love to all around her. May she rise above every challenge, heal every wound with grace, and inspire the world by her silent power. May her wisdom guide her family, her patience bring peace, and her love become the eternal light that shapes the future. She is the heartbeat of every home, the backbone of every story, and the unseen hero whose dignity and devotion deserve endless honor. May every woman in this family feel valued, protected, and celebrated, not for what she does, but for who she is. May her laughter echo endlessly, her tears be comforted with kindness, and her every step be guided by blessings from above. The world is brighter because of her, and her love is a gift that transcends generations. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter. Let's start with love." Connie Albert pressed her palm against the cold window of the aircraft, watching the city lights grow brighter as the plane descended. Her plane, her entire fleet. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was flying into the arms of people who still thought she scanned boarding passes for a living. The flight attendant approached with the practiced smile of someone who didn't know she was serving the woman who signed her paychecks. "Miss Albert, we'll be landing shortly. Can I get you anything before we begin our descent?" "I'm fine, thank you." Connie's voice was steady, but her stomach wasn't. She'd built an empire from the ashes of her divorce, turned a failing charter company into one of the country's most profitable airlines, and faced down corporate sharks who tried to destroy her. Yet somehow, the thought of seeing Ralph's mother again made her hands tremble. Her phone buzzed. Another voicemail from Margaret, Ralph's mother. Connie had stopped listening to them after the first few, but she'd counted them. 15 messages in the past month, each one more desperate than the last. "Please come home for Christmas, Connie. Ralph misses you. We all do. It would mean so much to have you here. Please." The word home stuck in her throat like a bone. That house had never been home. It had been a carefully constructed stage where she'd played the role of the girl who wasn't quite good enough, while they'd played the gracious family trying so hard to accept her. The plane touched down smoothly. Connie gathered her single designer bag, its cost equivalent to what she used to make in several months when she actually did work at an airline counter. Back when Ralph's family would ask with such concern if she was getting enough hours, and suggest with such sweetness that maybe Ralph could help with her bills. Back when she'd smile and pretend their pity didn't sting, she'd learned better. The Uber driver tried making conversation, but Connie's polite one-word responses eventually silenced him. She stared out the window as familiar streets passed by, each one a ghost of who she used to be. There was the grocery store where Margaret had gently suggested Connie's wine contribution wasn't quite right for Thanksgiving, then bought an expensive bottle herself, just in case. There was the park where Amanda had organized a family photo shoot and somehow, every single time, forgot to call Connie over from where she was playing with the kids. There was the restaurant where Ralph had promised her things would get better, that his family just needed time to warm up to her. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of being warmly tolerated, 3 years of kind smiles that never reached their eyes and gentle suggestions that she wasn't measuring up, 3 years of drowning in politeness that felt like slow suffocation, and rebuild she had. The Uber pulled up to the familiar colonial-style house with its perfectly manicured lawn and tasteful Christmas decorations. Connie could see movement through the windows. Lots of movement. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't going to be the quiet, private reunion Margaret's voicemails had implied. She paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk, looking at the house. Every instinct screamed at her to get back in the car and leave. But she'd flown across the country for this. She needed to face them one last time, needed to prove to herself that their opinions no longer had power over her. Connie walked up the steps and rang the doorbell. The door swung open, and Margaret stood there, her face lighting up with what looked like genuine warmth. "Connie, oh my goodness, you came! Come in, it's freezing out there." Behind her, the living room was full. Ralph's sister Amanda and her husband, their two young children playing with toys in the corner, Ralph's aunt and uncle, cousins, the entire family, exactly as Connie remembered, perfectly dressed, perfectly welcoming, perfectly poised to make her feel like an outsider while insisting she belonged. "We're so glad you could make it," Margaret said, her hand on Connie's arm, her touch light and warm. "Ralph will be so happy. He's just finishing up a call in the study. Work, you know how it is. Or, well," she paused delicately, "I suppose your schedule must be quite different now, more flexible." The implication hung in the air, that Connie's job was less demanding, less important, that she had the luxury of flexible hours because she wasn't doing anything critical. "Something like that," Connie said evenly. Amanda appeared, wineglass in hand, her smile bright and friendly. "Connie, look at you. That coat is gorgeous. Is it new?" "Well, new to you, I mean. I love a good consignment find." Connie's coat was designer, bought at full price, but Amanda's tone suggested she assumed otherwise, that of course Connie would be shopping second-hand, that it was sweet she was trying to look nice. "Thank you," Connie said simply. Come sit," Margaret gestured to the living room. "We were just talking about the trip. Amanda and her family are heading to a resort after Christmas. It's adults only, unfortunately. The kids are disappointed, but you know how these places are. Very exclusive, very expensive." She said it kindly, sympathetically, as if Connie would understand why she couldn't possibly be invited. As if the cost was the barrier, not the fact that they simply didn't want her there. "Actually," Margaret continued, her voice dropping to a confidential tone, "we were hoping you might be able to help us out. The babysitter we usually use is unavailable, and we thought, since you're visiting anyway, and you always were so good with the children, maybe you wouldn't mind watching them. Just for a few days. It would mean so much to Amanda. She works so hard. She really needs this break." The request was wrapped in such gentle language, such reasonable logic. Of course Connie was visiting anyway. Of course she was good with children. Of course Amanda needed a break from her hard work, unlike Connie, whose job was presumably less stressful. Before Connie could respond, Ralph emerged from the study. He looked older, softer around the middle, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. He crossed the room and pulled her into a hug that felt performative, aware of his family watching. "Connie, you actually came. That's great, really great." He released her and grabbed a beer from the side table. "Mum was just telling me about the babysitting thing. That would really help us out. The kids love you, and honestly, it's not like you have big holiday plans, right? Might as well spend the time with family." The casual assumption that she had nowhere else to be. The easy certainty that of course she'd do this favor. The way they'd already decided among themselves before even asking her properly. One of Amanda's children ran over, sticky hands reaching for Connie's coat. Amanda laughed. "Oh, sweetie, be careful. That's Aunt Connie's nice coat. We don't want to get your hands on it." Then to Connie, with an apologetic smile. "They're at that age, you know. Into everything. I hope you brought clothes you don't mind getting messy. Kids can be such a disaster." The implication that Connie's one designer bag couldn't possibly contain anything suitable for childcare. that she wasn't prepared, wasn't thinking ahead, wasn't quite up to the task. Connie stood in that living room, surrounded by warm smiles and kind voices and gentle suggestions, and felt the old familiar feeling wash over her. The sense that she was always slightly wrong, slightly off, slightly less than everyone else in the room, but it was delivered with such sweetness, such concern, such apparent affection that questioning it felt churlish. This was what they did. They made you feel small while insisting they were being kind. They excluded you while claiming to include you. They diminished you while swearing they valued you. And for 3 years of marriage, Connie had accepted it, had smiled and nodded, and tried harder to fit into a space that was never meant for her. But she wasn't that woman anymore. "Actually," Connie said, her voice cutting through the chatter with unexpected sharpness, "I didn't fly here to babysit your children." The room went quiet. Margaret's smile flickered. Amanda's hand paused halfway to her wineglass. "I flew here on my own airline," Connie continued calmly, "to see if any of you had changed, to see if maybe, after all these years, you'd learn to treat people with basic respect instead of this passive-aggressive performance you call family love." "Connie, I don't know what you—" Margaret started, her voice still sweet, but with an edge now. "My own airline," Connie repeated. She pulled out her phone with deliberate slowness, opened the app she'd designed herself, the one that had revolutionized customer service in the industry. Her face filled the welcome screen above the words CEO and founder, Connie Albert. She turned it around slowly, letting each person in that room get a good look. "I don't scan tickets anymore, Margaret. I own the company. I bought out the original owners and turned it into what it is today. Those flexible hours you mentioned, that's because I set my own schedule. That consignment coat you admired, Amanda, it cost more than your car payment. And those flights you all took to Europe last summer, the ones you posted all over social media, I personally reviewed your booking and removed the complimentary upgrades I'd originally approved before I knew you were my ex-in-laws." The silence was absolute. Margaret's face had gone pale, her carefully maintained composure cracking. She started whispering, barely audible, "No, that's not... You couldn't..." Amanda's wineglass slipped from her hand, red liquid spreading across the pristine white carpet. Her husband's mouth hung open. The children, sensing the shift in energy, had gone quiet. Ralph looked like someone had struck him. "Connie, I don't understand. You never said, you never asked," Connie said, her voice cold. "In 3 years of marriage, Ralph, you never once asked about my dreams, my ambitions, my plans. You just assumed I'd always be the girl you could pat on the head and tell to be grateful for being included in your family. You assumed I'd always be small enough to fit into whatever role you assigned me." She turned her attention back to Margaret. "I came here to see if you'd changed, if maybe losing me had taught you anything about how you treat people, but within 5 minutes of walking through that door, you'd already assigned me childcare duties, insulted my career, and made it clear I still don't belong here." "We didn't mean it like that," Margaret said quickly, her voice shaking. "Connie, we were just trying to include you." "No," Connie interrupted. "You were trying to use me, the same way you used me for 3 years. Free labor disguised as family bonding. Constant criticism disguised as helpful suggestions. Exclusion disguised as unfortunate circumstances. All delivered with such sweetness that I was supposed to be grateful for the crumbs you threw me." Edward, Ralph's father, had been standing in the corner, silent as always. Now he stepped forward, his face lined with something that looked like pain. "She's right," he said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Edward never contradicted his wife, never inserted himself into family drama, never went against the grain. He walked to Connie and looked her directly in the eyes. "I always knew you were special, Connie. From the first time Ralph brought you home, I saw your strength, your intelligence, your grace, and I watched us destroy it because we were too small to recognize greatness when it sat at our dinner table. Edward, Margaret's voice was sharp now, the sweetness completely gone. He held up his hand, silencing his wife for perhaps the first time in their marriage. His eyes never left Connie's face. I'm sorry I never said it when it mattered. I'm sorry I let them treat you like someone to be tolerated instead of celebrated. I'm sorry we made you feel like you weren't good enough, when the truth is we were never worthy of you, not one of us, especially not my son. Ralph made a sound like he'd been punched. Connie felt tears prick her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not for these people. Thank you, Edward, she said softly. That means more than you know. She turned to face the room one last time. I built an empire from the ashes of what you did to me. I became everything I was capable of becoming the moment I stopped trying to shrink myself to fit into your narrow definition of acceptable. And I came here to prove to myself that your opinions don't matter anymore, that your subtle cruelties and your backhanded compliments and your kind-sounding dismissals have no power over me. She looked at Ralph. I came here to see if you'd changed, to see if you'd finally grown into someone who could stand up for what's right, someone who could see when his family was being cruel and actually say something, someone who could be a man instead of a boy who needs his mother's approval more than he needs his own integrity. She let the words sink in, watched them hit him like physical blows. Thank you for answering that question so quickly. It saves us both time. She walked toward the door. Margaret moved to block her path, her composure completely shattered now, tears running down her face. We didn't know, Margaret whispered. We didn't know you'd become this. We thought you'd just move on, find someone else. We never thought you never thought I'd matter, Connie finished. That's the problem, Margaret. You never thought I mattered at all. You thought I was someone you could treat poorly forever because I'd always be too grateful for your acceptance to complain. You thought I'd always be the girl desperate to belong to your family. You were wrong. She opened the door and stepped out into the cold night air. Behind her she heard Margaret sobbing, Amanda's shocked silence, and Ralph calling her name with something that sounded like desperation. Connie got into the waiting Uber, and only when the car pulled away from the curb did she let herself breathe. Her phone started ringing immediately. Ralph's name flashed on the screen. Then again. Then again. She blocked the number without hesitation, without a second thought, without an ounce of regret. The driver caught her eye in the rearview mirror. Rough visit? Connie looked back at the house, growing smaller in the distance. Through the windows, she could see the family standing frozen, their perfect Christmas gathering shattered by the truth they'd spent years avoiding. No, she said quietly. It was exactly what I needed. She had come for closure. She had come to see if Ralph had changed, if his family had learned anything, if there was any chance of reconciliation. They'd given her an answer, and she'd given them something they'd never forget. Proof that subtle cruelty has consequences, that treating someone as less than human, even with smiles and kind words, doesn't erase the damage, that you can't hide abuse behind good manners and family obligation. Connie Albert, the woman they'd gently tolerated and sweetly dismissed, now owned the sky they flew through, and she'd just reminded them that empires aren't built by people who accept backhanded compliments as kindness. They're built by people who see through the performance and choose themselves anyway. Chapter 2. The Reckoning. The hotel suite was everything Ralph's house wasn't, modern, clean hers. Connie stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, still wearing her coat, still carrying that single designer bag. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what had just happened. Her assistant had already sent the confirmation. Presidential suite. Champagne on ice. Privacy guaranteed. The hotel staff knew who she was, treated her with the respect she'd earned, asked for nothing except how they could make her stay perfect. The contrast was almost painful. Connie poured herself a glass of champagne and sank into the plush sofa. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened window, and for a moment she didn't recognize herself. This powerful woman in designer clothes, commanding hotel suites and corporate empires. Where was the girl who'd loved Ralph so desperately she'd endured years of quiet humiliation? Gone, burned away, good riddance. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. Connie almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Connie, please don't hang up." Ralph's voice was raw, desperate. "I'm calling from my father's phone. I just need 5 minutes, please." She should have hung up, should have blocked this number too, should have poured another glass of champagne and celebrated her victory. Instead, she heard herself say, "You have 5 minutes, starting now." "I'm in the hotel lobby," he said quickly. "The Grandview, right? I followed your car. I know that's crazy, but I need to see you, face to face, please." Connie's jaw tightened. "You followed me?" "I'm desperate, Connie. What you said tonight, what my father said, the way you looked at me like I was nothing. I deserve all of it. I know I do. But I need to explain. I need you to understand what happened." "What happened is that you were weak," Connie said coldly. "What happened is that you let your family treat me like garbage for 3 years while you stood by and laughed along with them. What happened is that you chose them over me every single time it mattered. I know. God, Connie, I know. And I've regretted it every day since you left, every single day." "Regret is easy, Ralph. Change is hard. And you haven't changed. Tonight proved that." There was a long silence. She could hear him breathing, could almost see him standing in the lobby, phone pressed to his ear, face red with shame. "5 minutes," he whispered. "Just give me 5 minutes to look you in the eye and tell you the truth. Then I'll leave. I'll never contact you again if that's what you want. But please, let me say what I should have said years ago." Connie closed her eyes. This was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake. But part of her, that small part that still remembered loving him, needed to hear what he had to say, needed to close this door completely. "Lobby bar, 5 minutes. If you're 1 second late, I'm gone." She hung up before he could thank her. Connie changed quickly, trading her coat for a blazer that screamed power and control. She checked her reflection, made sure her armor was firmly in place, then took the elevator down. Ralph was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking more disheveled than she'd ever seen him. His hair was a mess, his eyes were red, and his hands trembled around a glass of water he wasn't drinking. He stood when he saw her, nearly knocking over his chair. "Connie, thank you. Thank you for—" "Sit down. You have 5 minutes. Don't waste them on gratitude." They sat. The bar was nearly empty, just a couple in the far corner and a businessman nursing a scotch. Neutral territory. Safe. Connie kept her expression blank, her posture perfect. Every inch the CEO. Ralph looked at her like she was a stranger. "You're so different. You're exactly the same. That's the problem." He flinched. "You're right, God, you're right. I'm the same coward I was when you left. I stood there tonight and let them humiliate you all over again, and I laughed like it was funny, like you were still someone we could mock and dismiss." "Why did you call me here, Ralph? To tell me things I already know. To tell you that my father was right." His voice cracked. "We were never worthy of you. I was never worthy of you, and I've spent every day since the divorce realizing what I lost." Connie leaned back, studying him. "What exactly did you lose? A woman who cooked your favorite meals, who ironed your shirts, who smiled through every insult your mother threw at her because she loved you too much to fight back." "I lost the only person who ever really saw me," Ralph said quietly. "The only person who believed in me when I was just starting out, when my career was going nowhere, when I was nobody. You saw something in me that didn't exist, Connie. And instead of trying to become that person, I let you down. I let them tear you apart because it was easier than standing up to my mother. Your time is almost up. I don't want you back." The words tumbled out desperately. "I know that's impossible. I know I destroyed that. But I need you to know that you weren't wrong about me. The man you thought I could be, he's still in here somewhere. And seeing you tonight, seeing what you became, it made me realize I've been dead for years, going through the motions, pretending to be alive." Connie checked her watch. "Time's up." "Connie, I heard you. You're sorry. You're regretful. You've spent years thinking about what you lost. But Ralph, you haven't told me anything that changes what you are. You're still the man who chose his mother's approval over his wife's dignity. You're still the man who laughed at me tonight." She stood. Ralph stood too, reaching for her hand. She pulled back before he could touch her. "I didn't come here for an apology," Connie said. "I came here to prove to myself that I'm over you, that what we had is dead and buried. Thank you for confirming it." She turned to leave, and Ralph's voice stopped her one last time. "I'm going to change, Connie. I'm going to become the man you deserved, not for you, not to win you back, but because I can't live like this anymore. I can't be this weak, pathetic version of myself. I'm going to cut my mother out of my life. I'm going to fix myself, and maybe someday you'll hear about it and think, good for him." Connie looked back at him. His eyes were sincere, desperate, broken. She'd seen this look before. Right after the divorce, when he'd begged her to reconsider, promised to change, sworn he'd be different. He never had been. "Good luck with that," she said softly, and walked away. Back in her suite, Connie finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion. She'd faced them. She'd won. She'd proven her power and left them in ruins. So why did she feel so empty? Her phone buzzed again. A text from Edward. "I meant every word. You deserved better than us. I hope you find happiness." Connie stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I already found it. I found myself." She poured another glass of champagne and stood by the window, looking out at the city she'd conquered. Tomorrow she'd fly home to her real life, her empire, her success. Tonight she'd allow herself to mourn what could have been if Ralph had been brave enough to love her the way she deserved. But she wouldn't mourn for long. Connie Albert didn't build empires by dwelling on weak men and their broken promises. She built them by moving forward, by being stronger than the people who tried to destroy her, and she'd never been stronger than she was right now. Chapter 3. The Woman She Built. Connie's jet cut through the morning sky, carrying her home to a life Ralph couldn't even imagine. She sat in her private cabin, laptop open, running her empire from somewhere above the clouds. It was fitting, really. She'd spent 3 years of marriage feeling grounded, trapped, suffocated. Now, she literally owned the sky. Her chief operating officer's face filled the screen, concern evident even through the video call. "You're sure you're okay? You took this trip so suddenly." "I'm fine, David. Just closing a chapter I should have closed years ago." Connie pulled up the quarterly reports, forcing her mind back to business. "Walk me through the expansion timeline." They spent the next hour discussing new routes, fleet upgrades, market share projections. This was her language now, not the quiet pleading of a woman begging her husband to defend her, not the small talk of family dinners where she didn't belong. This was power, control, success on her own terms. When the call ended, Connie allowed her mind to drift back, not to last night's confrontation, but further, back to the beginning. She'd met Ralph at a coffee shop near the university where she was finishing her business degree. He'd been charming, funny, attentive in ways that made her feel special. They'd dated for months before he brought her home to meet his family, and by then, she was already in love. The first dinner should have been a warning. Margaret had greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, asked pointed questions about Connie's prospects and family background. When Connie mentioned her mother cleaned houses to put her through school, the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. "How industrious," Margaret had said, her tone making it clear she meant the opposite. Ralph had squeezed Connie's hand under the table, but said nothing. That became the pattern. Squeeze her hand. Silent support. Never verbal defense. The wedding had been Margaret's production. Connie had wanted something small and intimate, but Margaret insisted on a full church ceremony with hundreds of guests Connie didn't know. Her mother had looked so out of place in that crowd, her one nice dress, shabby, compared to the designer outfits of Ralph's family friends. Amanda had made a joke during the reception about marrying up that made everyone laugh except Connie and her mother. Ralph had been too drunk to notice. The marriage itself was a slow erosion. Little comments about her cooking not being as good as Margaret's, jokes about her cute little job at the airline counter, family events where she was expected to serve and clean up while the real family members socialized. Ralph always promised it would get better, that his mother just needed time, that Connie was being too sensitive. She'd believed him because she loved him, because she'd thought love meant sacrifice and patience and enduring discomfort for the sake of keeping the peace. The divorce had been her rock bottom. Ralph had been the one to file, claiming they'd grown apart. The settlement was minimal. She'd gotten barely enough to survive for a few months, let alone thrive. Margaret had been thrilled. Amanda had made more jokes about Connie finally knowing her place. Connie had spent the first week after the divorce in bed crying, wondering how she'd let herself become so small. Her mother had come to stay with her, brought homemade soup, held her while she fell apart. "You're stronger than this," her mother had said. "You're stronger than all of them. Now prove it." So she had. The failing charter company had been a desperate gamble. Connie took every penny of her settlement, maxed out her credit cards, and made an offer the owners couldn't refuse. They'd laughed at her initially. A woman with no airline experience trying to run a business? Ridiculous. But Connie had done her homework. She knew the industry from her years at the counter, knew what customers wanted, knew where the inefficiencies were. She implemented changes the old owners had been too stubborn to consider. Updated technology, improved customer service, expanded routes strategically instead of recklessly. The first year she barely slept, worked 20-hour days, lived on coffee and determination, lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, second-guessed every decision. But slowly, impossibly, the company started turning around. Revenue increased, customer satisfaction ratings soared, other airlines noticed, investors started calling. Connie's mother died before she could see the full extent of her daughter's success. That loss had nearly broken Connie all over again, but she'd channeled the grief into her work, expanding more aggressively, acquiring smaller airlines, building something her mother would have been proud of. Now, years later, Connie commanded respect in rooms full of men who would have dismissed her once. She negotiated deals worth millions. She made decisions that affected thousands of employees. She'd been featured in business magazines, invited to speak at conferences, courted by companies wanting her expertise. And through it all, she'd been alone. There had been other men, of course, successful men who wanted to date the powerful CEO, but they always revealed themselves eventually. They wanted a trophy, or they felt threatened by her success, or they expected her to shrink herself to make them feel bigger. Connie had learned to spot the warning signs early. The man who introduced her as "my girlfriend" before mentioning her name or accomplishments. The one who suggested she might want to slow down on work to focus on starting a family. The CEO who tried to merge their companies after sleeping together, as if her body came with business assets. She'd shut them all down. Built walls so high that loneliness became preferable to disappointment. The jet's descent jolted her back to the present. Home. Her penthouse apartment with its spectacular view and its painful silence. her office where she was respected and feared and never truly known. Connie gathered her things as the plane landed. Her driver waited on the tarmac, professional and distant. Her assistant had already sent her schedule for the week: board meetings, investor calls, site visits to new facilities. Her life was full, her calendar was packed, her bank account was obscene, and she was so desperately tired of being alone. But that was the price of power, wasn't it? That was what she'd traded for her empire. The chance at love, at family, at someone who saw past the CEO to the woman underneath. Connie pushed the thought away as she climbed into the car. She'd made her choices. She'd chosen strength over vulnerability, success over connection, empire over intimacy. She wouldn't apologize for it, wouldn't regret it, wouldn't let herself wonder what might have been if Ralph had been different, if his family had been kinder, if love had been enough. Her phone buzzed. An email from an unknown address. Against her better judgment, Connie opened it. "I meant what I said. I'm going to change. I'm starting therapy this week. I told my mother she's no longer welcome in my life until she can treat people with basic human decency. I'm not doing this to win you back. I'm doing it because you showed me what it looks like to rise from nothing and become everything. Thank you for that final lesson. I hope your empire brings you the happiness you deserve. Ralph." Connie stared at the email for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Words were easy. Change was hard. She'd heard his promises before, but as the car drove through the city toward her empty penthouse, she couldn't quite shake the feeling that something had shifted. Not in Ralph. Maybe in her. The armor she'd built so carefully felt heavier than usual. The walls felt higher. The loneliness felt sharper. Connie Albert had everything she'd ever wanted professionally. She'd proven everyone wrong, built something magnificent from the ashes of her humiliation, so why did victory feel so much like loss? Chapter 4. The Lawyer. Connie was 3 days into being back home when Margaret showed up at her office. Security called first. "Miss Albert, there's a Margaret Bruce here with her attorney demanding to see you. Should we remove them?" Connie's hand tightened on her phone. Of course Margaret had found her. Of course she'd brought a lawyer. The woman couldn't accept defeat gracefully. That would require grace she didn't possess. "Send them up," Connie said calmly. "Conference room B, I'll be there in 5 minutes." She took her time, finished reviewing the contract in front of her, checked her makeup in the mirror, called her own attorney and put him on standby. Only then did she walk to the conference room where Margaret and some nervous-looking man in an expensive suit waited. Margaret looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than she had in her own home, with her family around her. Here, in Connie's territory, surrounded by the trappings of real power, Margaret was just an angry woman making threats she couldn't back up. "Connie." Margaret's voice tried for authority, but landed somewhere near desperation. "We need to talk about your behavior at my house." Connie sat down at the head of the table, the position of power, and folded her hands. "You have 15 minutes. Your lawyer's clock is running. Make it count." The attorney cleared his throat. "Ms. Albert, my client is prepared to file suit for defamation and harassment. Your statements at her home caused significant emotional distress to the entire family, and your actions could be construed as threatening behavior given your position of power in the airline industry." Connie almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she pulled out her phone, opened her recording app, and played back the audio from that night at the door. Every word, every laugh, every cruel joke, Margaret's cold greeting, Ralph's mockery, all of it. "I record all my interactions when visiting hostile environments," Connie said calmly, "a practice my legal team insisted on after several attempted business shakedowns. Would you like to hear the rest? The part where your client treated me like hired help? The part where her son publicly humiliated me in front of his entire family?" The lawyer's face went pale. "That's illegal recording without consent." In a single-party consent state? Try again. Connie leaned forward. I'm happy to countersue for harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and we can throw in a few other charges my legal team will be creative about. The media would love this story. Wealthy family attempts to sue the self-made CEO they once treated as their servant. The headlines write themselves. Margaret's hands shook. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, Connie said. You did it to yourselves. You invited me to your home under false pretenses. You attempted to use me as free childcare. You publicly mocked and belittled me. All I did was exist in my own power. If that intimidates you, that's your problem, not mine. My son is devastated, Margaret whispered. He's cut me out of his life. He won't take my calls. He's saying terrible things about how we treated you, about how I raised him to be weak. This is your fault. No, Connie said firmly. This is your fault. You raised a son who couldn't stand up to you. You created a family culture of cruelty disguised as humor. You treated people as less than human based on their economic status. Those are your choices, Margaret. You made them for years. Now you're facing the consequences. The lawyer tried one more time. Ms. Albert, perhaps we can reach some kind of settlement. My client is willing to offer a public apology in exchange for your agreement not to pursue any legal action or make any public statements about the family. I don't want her apology, Connie said. I don't want her money. I don't want anything from her except for her to leave me alone. Tell your client that if she contacts me again, if she shows up at my office again, if she so much as mentions my name in public, I will destroy her so thoroughly she'll wish she'd treated me better when she had the chance. Margaret made a sound like a wounded animal. I just wanted what was best for my son. No, Connie said, standing up. You wanted control. You wanted to feel superior. You wanted someone to look down on so you could feel better about yourself. I was convenient. But I'm not that person anymore, Margaret. I'm the woman who survived you. And that terrifies you because it means you were wrong about me. It means you threw away the best thing that ever happened to your son because you were too small to recognize it. Margaret's composure finally cracked. Tears streamed down her face, mascara running, hands clutching at the table. I didn't know. I didn't know you'd become this. I thought you'd just go away, find some other man, live some small life. I never thought... You never thought I'd matter, Connie finished. That's the problem, Margaret. You never thought I mattered at all. She walked to the door, opened it. Security will escort you out. Don't come back. The lawyer gathered his things quickly, clearly eager to be away from this disaster. Margaret stood slowly, looking older than Connie had ever seen her. He really has cut me off, Margaret said softly. Ralph won't speak to me. Edward barely looks at me. Amanda is furious because I've embarrassed the family. I've lost everything. Now you know how I felt when you all decided I wasn't good enough for your family, Connie said. The difference is I built something from that pain. What will you build, Margaret? Margaret left without answering. Connie watched her go, feeling nothing but exhaustion. No satisfaction, no victory. Just the hollow awareness that breaking someone who already broken doesn't actually heal anything. Her phone rang. Ralph's father. Connie, I heard what happened. Margaret called me from the parking garage, hysterical. I'm sorry. I told her not to go to your office, but she wouldn't listen. It's handled, Edward. Your wife won't be bothering me again. Ralph doesn't know she went to see you, Edward continued. He's been staying with me since that night. Won't go home, won't talk to his mother. He's serious about changing, Connie. I've never seen him like this. That's not my concern anymore. I know. I know you owe us nothing, but I wanted you to know that what you did, what you said, it broke something open in this family. Things that needed to break. Ralph is finally seeing what we did to him, what we made him into. He's angry, really angry. And for the first time in his life, he's directing that anger at the people who deserve it. Connie sat down heavily. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know that you didn't just save yourself when you left. You might have saved my son too. It just took him this long to realize it. After Edward hung up, Connie sat alone in her office, looking out at the city. She'd built this empire to prove them wrong. She'd accumulated power and wealth and success to show them exactly what they'd thrown away. But revenge, she was discovering, tasted like ashes. Destroying Margaret didn't feel victorious. It felt sad, pathetic even, like crushing an insect that had once seemed terrifying but turned out to be small and fragile all along. Connie had wanted them to hurt the way they'd hurt her. And they did. Margaret was suffering. Ralph was suffering. The whole family was fractured. So why didn't it feel better? Why did winning feel so much like losing? Her assistant knocked softly. Ms. Albert, the quarterly review meeting starts in 10 minutes. Connie straightened her shoulders, smoothed her suit, rebuilt her armor. I'll be right there. She walked into that meeting with her head high and her voice steady, commanded the room, made decisions that would affect thousands of people, proved once again that she belonged at the top of this empire she'd built. But late that night, alone in her penthouse, Connie wondered if she'd built an empire or a prison, and whether there was any difference at all. Chapter 5. The letter Edward showed up at Connie's apartment on a Thursday evening without calling first. The doorman rang up, sounding apologetic. Ms. Albert, there's an Edward Bruce here to see you. He says it's important. Should I send him away? Connie almost said yes, almost told the doorman to inform Edward that she didn't meet with the Bruce family anymore, that whatever he wanted could be handled through attorneys or not at all. But something stopped her. Edward had been the only one to speak up that night, the only one to acknowledge the truth, the only one who seemed genuinely sorry. Send him up, she said quietly. She waited by the door, still in her work clothes, exhausted from a day of back-to-back meetings. When the knock came, she opened it to find Edward looking older and more tired than she remembered. He held a single envelope in his hands. I won't take much of your time, he said. I just needed to give you this, and to say something I should have said years ago. Connie stepped aside, let him in. Her apartment was pristine, expensive, perfectly decorated, every surface carefully curated to project success and control. Edward looked around with sad eyes. This is beautiful, he said, but it feels lonely. I didn't invite you here to critique my interior design, Edward. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. You're right. I'm sorry. He held out the envelope. Ralph wrote this 2 years after your divorce. He never sent it. I found it in his desk drawer when I was helping him move out of Margaret's house. He doesn't know I have it, but I think you should read it. Connie didn't take the envelope. I don't want to read Ralph's excuses. It's not excuses, Edward said softly. It's the truth. The ugly, painful truth he couldn't face when you were married. The truth that's destroying him now because he waited too long to acknowledge it. Why should I care about what's destroying Ralph? He didn't care about what was destroying me. Edward's eyes filled with tears. You're right. You're absolutely right. But Connie, I'm not here for Ralph. I'm here for you. Because I think part of you is still carrying the weight of that marriage, still wondering if you weren't good enough, if you didn't try hard enough, if maybe you deserved how we treated you. Connie's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected Edward to see straight through her armor to the wounded girl still hiding underneath. And this letter, Edward continued, it won't change what happened. It won't erase the pain. But it might help you understand that you were never the problem, that you were always more than enough, that we were the broken ones, not you. He set the envelope on her coffee table and walked to the door. "I know you don't owe us anything," he said. "I know we destroyed your ability to trust people like us, but I wanted you to know that what you've become, the empire you've built, the strength you've shown, Connie, you're extraordinary. And I'm sorry we were too blind and too cruel to see it when it mattered." He left before she could respond. Connie stood in her empty apartment, staring at that envelope like it was a bomb. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat on her pristine white couch, told herself she'd throw the letter away unread. But her hands were already opening the envelope. Ralph's handwriting was messier than she remembered, like he'd written this quickly, urgently, unable to contain the words. "Connie, I'm writing this at 3 in the morning because I can't sleep. I haven't slept properly since you left. I know I don't have the right to contact you. I know the divorce papers made it clear you wanted nothing to do with me. I'm not sending this letter. I'm just writing it because I need to say these things, even if only to myself. I destroyed us. Not you, not circumstances, not bad timing or growing apart or any of the lies I told the lawyer. Me. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too weak to stand up to my mother, too cowardly to defend you, too pathetic to be the man you deserved. You used to look at me like I was someone special, like I had potential, like I could be great. Do you remember that? In the beginning, before my family got their claws into you, you'd smile at me, and I'd feel like I could do anything. Then I watched that light die, slowly, dinner by dinner, holiday by holiday. Every time my mother made a cutting remark and I said nothing. Every time Amanda mocked you and I laughed along. Every time I chose them over you. I watched you shrink, Connie. Watched you become smaller and quieter and sadder. And I told myself it was fine. I told myself you were adjusting, that you'd toughen up, that my family would eventually accept you. But the truth is, I didn't want them to accept you. Because if they accepted you, I'd have to admit that I'd been letting them abuse you. I'd have to confront my own weakness. It was easier to let you be the problem, to let you be the one who wasn't good enough, who wasn't fitting in, who was too sensitive. The day you left, you were so calm. You packed your things methodically. You didn't cry. You didn't yell. You just looked at me with these empty eyes and said, "I hope you find someone who makes you happy, Ralph. Because I'm tired of disappearing to make you comfortable." I didn't understand what you meant then. I thought you were being dramatic, but now I understand. You'd been disappearing for years, all the parts of you that were bright and funny and strong and independent. You'd hidden them away to make me comfortable, to make my mother comfortable, to make everyone comfortable except yourself. And I let you. God, Connie, I let you erase yourself, and I told myself it was love. I saw you last week. You probably didn't see me. You were getting into a car outside some corporate building downtown, talking on your phone, looking powerful and confident and completely unreachable. You looked like you'd swallowed the sun, and I realized you'd become everything you were supposed to be, everything you would have been if I hadn't tried to make you small. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I just needed to say that you were right. About all of it. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. You deserved a partner who saw your strength and celebrated it instead of fearing it. You deserved a man who would have walked through fire for you instead of hiding behind his mother's skirt. I don't know if you're happy now. I hope you are. I hope you found someone who sees you the way you should be seen. I hope you built a life that makes you proud. I'm trying to be better. I know that doesn't matter to you, but I'm in therapy. I'm working on standing up to my mother. I'm trying to figure out why I'm so weak, why I need her approval so desperately that I'd sacrifice everything else for it. It's too late for us. I know that. But maybe it's not too late for me to become someone who wouldn't make the same mistakes, someone who could actually deserve a woman like you, even if that woman is never you. I'm sorry, Connie. I'm so desperately sorry for all of it, for the years I stole from you, for the light I helped extinguish, for being too broken to love you the way you needed. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're finally free of people like me. Ralph. Connie read the letter 3 times. Then she set it down on the coffee table, and finally, for the first time since leaving Ralph's house that night, she cried. Not for Ralph, not for their marriage, not even for the years she'd wasted trying to be good enough for people who would never see her worth. She cried for the girl she used to be, the one who'd loved so openly, so hopefully, the one who'd believed that love could conquer cruelty if you just tried hard enough. The one who'd thought making yourself smaller was the same thing as being accommodating. That girl was gone. Connie had built an empire on her grave, and reading Ralph's letter, understanding that he finally saw what he'd destroyed, didn't bring that girl back. It just made Connie acutely aware of exactly how much she'd lost in the process of saving herself. The tears eventually stopped. Connie cleaned her face, put the letter back in its envelope, and placed it in a drawer. Not thrown away, not prominently displayed, just there, acknowledged. She poured another glass of wine and stood by her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city she'd conquered. Ralph was changing. The letter proved he'd been trying for years, but change without consequences wasn't real change. It was just evolution happening too late to matter. Connie had moved on, built a life, became someone Margaret and Ralph and their entire family could never have imagined. So why did victory still taste like loss? Why did power still feel like loneliness? Why did success still leave her standing alone in a beautiful apartment, wondering if she'd traded one prison for another? Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Reminder, investor gala tomorrow night. Car picks you up at 7. Another event. Another room full of people who wanted something from her. Another night of armor and performance and careful distance. Connie typed back a confirmation and finished her wine. Ralph's letter changed nothing. It couldn't change the past. It couldn't give her back the years she'd lost. It couldn't make her capable of trusting people again. But it did give her something, proof that she'd been right all along. The problem had never been her, the weakness had never been hers, and somehow that knowledge felt both liberating and utterly, devastatingly sad. Chapter 6. The Crisis. Connie was at the investor gala, champagne in hand and fake smile firmly in place, when her phone started buzzing urgently. David's name flashed across the screen. Her COO never called during events, unless it was critical. She excused herself from a conversation with a venture capitalist and stepped into the hallway. What's wrong? We have a problem. David's voice was tight with stress. Summit Airlines just launched a hostile takeover attempt. They're exploiting your absence from the office this week, claiming you're distracted and unstable. They've got 3 of our board members on their side already, and they're moving fast. Like tomorrow morning press conference fast. Connie's blood ran cold. Summit had been circling for months, looking for weakness, and she'd handed them the perfect excuse by taking personal time to deal with Ralph's family drama. Get me on the next flight home, she said, already moving toward the exit. Cancel everything. I need our legal team assembled in the war room by the time I land. And David, find out which board members are wavering. I need to know who I can trust. Already on it. Connie, this is bad. They're playing dirty. They've got someone feeding them internal information. Then we play dirtier. I didn't build this company by being nice. Get me home. Connie was in the car heading to the airport when her phone rang again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Connie, it's Ralph. Please don't hang up. Ralph, this is literally the worst possible time. I know about the takeover. I know because I'm friends with someone who works at Summit. He called me drunk tonight, bragging about how they're going to destroy you. I told him he was an idiot and hung up. Then I thought you should know what they're planning. Connie's hand tightened on the phone. What do you know? They're going to announce at the press conference that you've been taking secret personal trips, implying you're unstable, or hiding financial problems. They have photos of you at my parents' house, at your hotel, meeting with my mother and her lawyer. They're spinning it as you having personal issues that make you unfit to run a major airline. How did they get photos? I don't know. But Connie, they're making it look like you're falling apart, like you're distracted by personal drama. They're going to use your strength against you, make it look like weakness. Connie's mind raced. They'd turned her personal trip into ammunition, turned her confrontation with Ralph's family into evidence of instability. It was brilliant and vicious, and exactly what she would have done in their position. Why are you telling me this? Ralph's voice was quiet. Because you don't deserve this. Because I already destroyed you once, and I'll be damned if I let someone else do it too. And because I want to help, if you'll let me. How exactly can you help, Ralph? You going to show up at the press conference and defend me? That'll make it worse. No, but I can get you more information. My friend is sloppy when he's drunk. He'll talk. I can find out their entire strategy, who their inside source is, what evidence they think they have. I can be your spy. Connie should have said no, should have hung up, should have handled this the way she handled everything, alone, with her team, with her own resources. But she was tired and scared, and the hostile takeover was happening fast, and Ralph was offering help with no apparent strings attached. Fine, she said, but Ralph, if you screw me over, if this is some kind of game, it's not. I swear, Connie, I just want to help. Let me do this one thing right. She gave him her secure email and hung up. The car pulled up to her private hangar, where her jet was already being prepared for immediate departure. Connie boarded, her mind already strategizing. Summit thought they could use her personal life against her. They thought a trip to confront her ex-husband's family made her weak and distracted. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. Halfway through the flight, her phone pinged. An email from Ralph with detailed notes from his conversation with the Summit employee. Names, strategies, timeline, everything. At the bottom, I also found out who your inside source is. It's your head of marketing. He's been feeding them information for months in exchange for a VP position at Summit. I'm sorry, Connie. I know that's going to hurt. It did hurt, but Connie couldn't afford to feel it right now. She forwarded the information to David with instructions to verify and prepare termination paperwork. Another ping. Ralph again. I'm on a flight too, heading your direction, not to see you, just to be nearby in case you need anything. I'll stay out of your way. I promise. Connie stared at the message. Why are you doing this? His response came quickly. Because I spent 3 years watching you fight alone. Because I should have been in your corner then, and I wasn't. I can't change the past, but I can show up now. Even if you never forgive me, even if we never speak again after this, I can show up when you need someone. Let me be what I should have been. The plane landed in the early morning hours. Connie went straight to her office where her team waited, looking exhausted and worried. She walked in like a general preparing for war. Here's what's going to happen, she said, spreading Ralph's intel across the conference table. Summit thinks we're weak. They think I'm distracted. They think they can embarrass me into submission by making my personal life public. They're wrong on all counts. David scanned the documents, his face hardening. How did you get this? My ex-husband, Connie said simply. He's got connections at Summit. He's gathering more intel as we speak. Her general counsel raised an eyebrow. Can we trust him? No, Connie said honestly, but I can verify his information independently. And right now he's the only source we have. So we use him carefully, and we verify everything. They worked through the night. By morning, they'd built a counter-strategy that would eviscerate Summit's takeover attempt. By afternoon, they'd identified and removed the marketing director who'd been betraying them. By evening, they were ready. Connie's phone buzzed. Ralph. Summit is meeting at their headquarters tomorrow morning to finalize the press conference. My contact is there now. Want me to try to get more details? She responded, yes, but be careful. If they catch you gathering intel, this gets complicated. I'm already in their parking garage. I've been watching them come and go all day. Nobody pays attention to men in business suits hanging around corporate buildings. I'm invisible. Despite everything, Connie almost smiled. Ralph was actually useful. For the first time in their entire relationship, he was actively helping her instead of passively watching her struggle. Her strategy team worked for hours more. Connie ran on coffee and adrenaline, her mind sharp and focused. This was what she was good at. This was where she belonged. Not in some suburban house being mocked by her ex-in-laws. Not standing in hotel lobbies, listening to hollow apologies. Here, in the war room, fighting for her empire. Ralph sent updates throughout the night. Photos of Summit executives leaving the building, names of people attending the strategy session, fragments of overheard conversations. At 3 in the morning, Connie's phone rang. Ralph, sounding excited. I got it. I got their entire presentation. One of the executives was stupid enough to leave it open on his laptop in a conference room while he went to the bathroom. I took photos of every slide. Send them immediately. Within minutes, Connie had Summit's complete attack strategy. Every accusation they planned to make, every piece of supposed evidence, every vulnerable point they thought they'd found. It was exactly what she needed to destroy them. Ralph, she said when he called back, this changes everything. You just saved my company. Good, he said quietly. Maybe that makes up for 1% of what I destroyed. Why are you still there? You should go home. Get some sleep. I'm staying until you win. I'm not leaving your corner, Connie. Not this time. For the first time in days, Connie felt something other than exhaustion or anger or fear. She felt supported, like someone actually had her back, like she wasn't fighting alone. It was terrifying and comforting in equal measure. Get some rest, Ralph. I need you functional tomorrow when Summit makes their move. I'll be wherever you need me. Connie hung up and looked at her strategy team. They'd been watching her interaction with Ralph with poorly concealed curiosity. Not a word, she said. Let's finish this. They worked until dawn, building a counterattack so comprehensive, so devastating, that Summit would regret ever trying to take her down. Connie felt the familiar rush of combat, the clarity that came with fighting for something that mattered. But beneath it all, she couldn't stop thinking about Ralph sitting in a parking garage all night, gathering intelligence for her. Ralph flying across the country just to be nearby if she needed him. Ralph finally, impossibly, showing up. It didn't change the past. It didn't erase 3 years of failure. It didn't make him the man he should have been when they were married. But it was something. A beginning of something. Or an ending done right. She wasn't sure which. Either way, Summit was about to learn what happened when you came for Connie Albert's empire. And Ralph was about to learn what it felt like to stand beside someone strong instead of hiding behind them. Tomorrow would be a reckoning. For Summit, for Ralph, for everything. Connie couldn't wait. Chapter 7. The War. The press conference happened at noon. Summit had booked the downtown conference center, invited major business media, prepared their carefully crafted attack on Connie's leadership. They had no idea she'd spent the night preparing to demolish them. Connie arrived 30 minutes early with her entire legal team and her most loyal board members. She wore her power suit, the one she saved for important negotiations. Her hair was perfect, despite the sleepless night. Her expression was calm, almost pleasant. She looked like a woman without a care in the world, like she hadn't spent the night at war. The Summit executives noticed her arrival and their confidence faltered. They'd expected her to hide, to scramble, to look worried. Instead, she looked predatory. Ralph texted, "I'm in the back of the room, just here to watch you destroy them. You've got this." Connie didn't respond, but knowing he was there steadied her somehow. She'd spent years fighting alone. Having backup, even backup she didn't entirely trust yet, felt strangely right. Summit's CEO took the stage, smug and self-assured. He started with the usual pleasantries before moving into his attack. We've called this press conference to address serious concerns about the leadership and stability of our competitor. Recent evidence suggests that the current CEO has been dealing with significant personal issues that have affected her judgment and her ability to effectively run a major corporation. Photos appeared on the screen behind him. Connie arriving at Ralph's parents' house, Connie leaving a hotel, Connie meeting with Margaret and the lawyer, all taken from public spaces, perfectly legal and completely misleading when presented without context. These photos show a pattern of personal instability, the Summit CEO continued. Secret trips, unexplained meetings, erratic behavior that raises questions about fitness for leadership. We believe the shareholders and customers deserve better. Summit Airlines is prepared to offer a fair acquisition that would ensure stability and point of order, Connie said calmly, standing up. May I address these accusations? The Summit CEO looked thrown. This is our press conference, and these are defamatory lies about me and my company. Connie walked to the front of the room with the confidence of someone who owned not just her company, but the entire situation. I'm happy to let you finish your presentation, but then I'd like equal time to respond, unless you're afraid of what I might say. The reporters perked up. This was better than they'd expected. The Summit CEO had no choice but to agree or look like a coward. Fine, 5 minutes. I'll need 10. You've had months to prepare this attack. I've only had one night. He agreed reluctantly. Connie watched the rest of his presentation with a slight smile, taking notes, looking completely unbothered. Everything he said was technically true but completely misleading. The photos were real. She had taken those trips. She had met with those people. But the why mattered, and he'd deliberately left out the why. When he finished, looking pleased with himself, Connie took the stage. She connected her laptop to the projector and pulled up her first slide. Thank you for that fascinating presentation, she said pleasantly. Now let me provide some context. Those photos? Yes, that's me, visiting my ex-husband's family who had begged me to come for Christmas, meeting with my former mother-in-law, who showed up at my office with a lawyer threatening to sue me for defamation after I declined to babysit her grandchildren, all of which is documented and verified. She pulled up the receipts, voicemails from Margaret begging her to visit, the recording from that night at the house, security footage of Margaret and her lawyer at Connie's office building. But here's the interesting part, Connie continued. How did Summit get these photos? How did they know about private family matters? And why did they think my handling of personal harassment would make me unfit to run a company? She clicked to the next slide. Photos of the head of marketing meeting with Summit executives. Emails proving he'd been feeding them information. Bank records showing payments from Summit to his personal account. Corporate espionage. That's how. Your team paid my employee to betray my company, which is not just unethical, it's illegal. My legal team has already filed complaints with the appropriate regulatory agencies. The room erupted. Reporters started shouting questions. The Summit CEO's face went pale. Connie wasn't done. But let's talk about fitness for leadership. You want to question mine based on photos of me handling personal matters with professionalism and boundaries? Let's discuss your CEO's fitness. She pulled up the next slides. Evidence of financial irregularities at Summit, safety violations that had been covered up, employee harassment complaints that were swept under the rug. All of it carefully documented by Ralph's late-night intelligence gathering and her team's verification. This is what unstable leadership looks like, Connie said calmly. Not a woman dealing with her ex-husband's family drama. A CEO who cuts safety corners to maximize profits, who pays off harassment complaints instead of addressing culture problems, who resorts to corporate espionage when legitimate competition doesn't work. The Summit CEO stood up, furious. This is slander. It's documented fact. Every allegation I've made is supported by evidence my team has already provided to regulatory agencies. You came here to destroy my reputation based on misleading photos and innuendo. I came here with actual proof of actual wrongdoing. Connie faced the reporters directly. I built my company from nothing. I did it honestly. I did it by treating employees with respect and customers with integrity. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I've never resorted to espionage. I've never covered up safety issues, and I've never tried to destroy a competitor by exploiting their personal life. She clicked to her final slide. Summit's takeover attempt is rejected. Their accusations are disproven, and their CEO should be answering questions about his own fitness for leadership instead of questioning mine. Thank you. She walked off the stage while reporters swarmed the Summit executives with hostile questions. David met her at the side door, grinning. That was brutal. That was necessary. Connie's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Get our PR team to follow up. I want statements from every board member affirming their support. I want customer testimonials about our safety record. I want Summit buried by the end of the day. Already on it. Connie stepped outside into the cold air, finally letting herself breathe. She'd won. Summit was destroyed. Her company was safe. Ralph appeared beside her, hands in his pockets, looking at her with something like awe. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen, he said quietly. You didn't just defend yourself, you annihilated them. They came for my empire. I don't show mercy to people who do that. I know. I saw. Ralph smiled sadly. You've become everything you were meant to be, Connie. Everything I stopped you from being. You didn't stop me. You delayed me. There's a difference. They stood in silence for a moment. Connie should have been celebrating, but she just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being alone at the top. Tired of victory. Feeling hollow. Thank you, she said finally, for the intel, for showing up, for actually helping instead of just apologizing. It's what I should have done years ago. Yes, but you're doing it now. That's something. Ralph looked at her carefully. Can I buy you coffee? Not as your ex-husband, just as someone who'd like to sit with you while you decompress from that battle. No expectations, no agenda, just coffee. Connie should have said no. Should have gone back to her office, back to her team, back to her empire. Should have kept the walls up, the armor on, the distance safe. But she was tired of should. Tired of always doing the smart thing, the safe thing, the thing that protected her heart at the expense of her humanity. One coffee, she said. And Ralph, if you try to turn this into something it's not, I won't, I promise. Just two people who survived a war together having coffee, that's all. They went to a small cafe around the corner, not fancy, not corporate, just quiet and warm and ordinary. Connie ordered black coffee. Ralph ordered the same. They sat across from each other, and for the first time since the divorce, they actually talked. Not about the past or the future, just about the present. About the battle she'd just won. About how surreal it was to destroy someone professionally, about the cost of power and the loneliness of success. Ralph listened, really listened, didn't try to fix anything or offer solutions, just heard her. You're different, Connie said eventually, in the parking garage, gathering intelligence, helping without being asked. That's not who you were. I'm trying to be someone better, Ralph said. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. Why now? Why not when we were married? Because losing you destroyed me in ways I didn't understand for years. Because seeing what you became made me realize how small I'd tried to make you. Because I finally understood that the problem was never you. It was me. My weakness, my cowardice, my inability to stand up for anything that mattered. Connie studied him. He looked sincere. But sincerity was easy when you had nothing left to lose. Words are easy, Ralph. I know. That's why I'm not asking you to believe my words. I'm asking you to watch my actions. I'm in therapy. I've cut my mother out of my life until she can be a decent human being. I'm working on being someone who deserves to exist in the same world as you. Not with you, just in the same world. Because right now, I don't even deserve that. Despite herself, Connie felt something soften in her chest. Not forgiveness, not even trust, just acknowledgement. That change was possible, that people could grow, that maybe, just maybe, Ralph was finally becoming the man he should have been all along. But it was too late. They'd destroyed too much, hurt each other too deeply, built separate lives that didn't intersect anymore, except in moments like this. I need to get back to my office, Connie said, standing. Thank you for the coffee, and for the help, I mean that. Can I call you sometime? Not to ask for anything, just to check in, to make sure you're okay. Connie hesitated. Every instinct said no. Every wall she'd built said, protect yourself. Every lesson she'd learned said, don't let him back in. But she thought about him in that parking garage all night, about the intelligence he'd gathered, about the quiet support he'd offered without demanding anything in return. One call a month, she said finally, just to check in. Nothing more. One call a month, I'll take it. Connie walked back to her office feeling strange, lighter somehow, like she'd been carrying weight she didn't know about and had just set part of it down. She'd won the battle with Summit, saved her empire, proven her strength again. But more than that, she'd let someone help her, let Ralph show up, let herself believe just for a moment that maybe she didn't have to fight every battle alone. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't even trust, but it was something, and right now, something was enough. Chapter 8. The Walls. The months after the Summit battle passed in a blur of strategic victories. Connie's company stock hit record highs. Major publications ran features on her corporate warfare tactics. She was invited to speak at conferences, serve on boards, advise other CEOs. Her empire had never been stronger. She'd never been more alone. Ralph kept his promise. One call a month, nothing more. They'd talk for maybe 20 minutes. He'd ask how she was handling the pressure. She'd deflect and ask about his therapy. They'd dance around anything real, anything meaningful, both of them maintaining careful distance. But something had shifted after the Summit fight. Connie couldn't quite identify what, just that her armor felt heavier than usual. Her penthouse felt emptier. Her victories felt hollower. Success was supposed to fill the void. It was supposed to be enough. She'd built an empire to prove she didn't need anyone, didn't need Ralph's family, didn't need love or connection or vulnerability. So why did having everything feel like having nothing? It was late October when Ralph called outside their usual schedule. Connie almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I know this isn't our scheduled call, he said, but I wanted to tell you something, and I didn't want to wait. What is it? I confronted my mother today, really confronted her, told her exactly how toxic she is, how she destroyed our marriage, how she raised me to be weak